Start right here at the top. Kathy?
Mine are here at this table. I'll come around, but I better have my cheat sheet. First, I have Linda Greenwell, who is a member of the Board of Directors of WFAE and WFAG in Hickory, and a former member of the United Arts Council Board. She lives in Terrell. And this is Jeff Bundy, who's Executive Director of Branding and Engagement for WFAE. And yay. And this is April Harley, who is Director of Development for WFAE.
Welcome, happy to have you. We have other guests of Rotarians in the room. Linda?
President Mark, I'm pleased to introduce these fine guests today. We have with us Jim Carper. He is funeral manager at Catawba Memorial Park Funerals and Cremation. Welcome. At Memorial Park, Rob Hintz, who is sales manager there.
That's
I would like to also introduce to you Zan Pilgrim. She is from Hickory Realty Group. Welcome, Zan. And we have Ellen Bruley. Did I say that right? Bruley. Excuse me, Kelly Bruley. You're Ellen. Kelly Bruley. And she is relationship manager business relationship manager at Fry. And since I've already said your name, Ellen, I wasn't going to introduce Ellen since she's in the membership process, but we're glad to have Ellen Horn back visiting with us and soon to become a member. So thank
you. Welcome, all of you. Ann?
President Mark and fellow Rotarians, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jennifer Hunter Riley. She is a dentist with Catawba Family Practice. No, Catawba Family Dentistry. Welcome.
Welcome. Do we have any other guests of Rotarians in the room? No other guests? Do we have any announcements?
President Mark, I went by to see Geach this week again, and he sends his regards. He's improving and hopes to get back to the club real soon. But he left me with two messages. He asked me to remind each Rotarian to support our only project, the Rotarian Idol, by buying your tickets or buying an ad or selling an ad, at least do a personal ad, so that we may have a stellar event. And then the other thing he asked me to remind the club, the PEF has their annual drawing of $10,000, and he encouraged every Rotarian to support Lenore Ryan Athletics. Come back here and see this ticket master here. If I run out, Charles Snipes had some. But we would like for you to support it. All funds go to the PEF, the athletic arm of Lenore Ryan University. Go Bears.
Thank you, Steve. Sandy?
We have auditions today and Saturday for Rotarian Idol, and we're excited and hope we have a great turnout. And we will have tickets next week to be distributed.
Great, and the committee is doing a wonderful job selling the ads. Like she mentioned, the auditions start today and then Saturday, and they're just moving along, but they do need everybody's help to sell an ad and also be ready next week with your money for tickets. Jennifer?
This is just a reminder that our anniversary Sweetheart Luncheon is February the 11th. There's a sign-up sheet. We need members and any guests to sign up because it is a plated lunch, so we need a head count. You can also email me. Don't do both because then I have to go back and backtrack and see and double up, which is either email or sign up. But yeah, so we hope you all will be there. It'll be a great lunch.
Be a lot of fun, everybody. We're looking forward to it, so please sign up. Do we have any other announcements? Any other? Dan Kirby's doing well, is that correct, Lynn? Dan Kirby's doing well? I don't think he's coming back because Lynn's doing too good of a job. So,
I'm gonna go find him though.
yeah, Lynn's hunting him down, she's gonna bring him back. So we'll be seeing Dan real soon, I believe. We do have some sign-ups for the luncheon is right here. So just sign up right there. Looks like we got a good list so far. Bill, do you want to come up here or announcement on Stop Hunger Now? Also, charitable giving. If you know anybody that wants to put a request in, they can send that in to myself, Leslie, or Bob Conklin, and we put that in the mix when we're looking at doing some things for this year with our money from Rotary Idol last year. Yeah.
Mr. President, thank you. Good afternoon. Picking up on Cliff's, I thought, wonderful invocation, and recognizing that Lent is right around the corner. Stop Hunger Now, the 4th annual food bagging event, will occur the first Saturday in March, March 5th. It will take place at St. Albans Episcopal Church again. If you have a pen, I would appreciate it. This is going to be in your spoke, and we're going to ask Bruce to email you this, or at least post it on your website. But the following has been set up for all volunteers. http:// the word events .stophungernow.org /St. Albans. If you would go to that site, it will allow you to both register to volunteer and to make a contribution. We're intending to have 2 shifts. One begins at 9 a.m., will run to 11. We're going to clean up, resupply, get set up, and the second shift will begin at noon, probably break down around 2 o'clock. If we raise as much money as I hope we will, we'll bag 25,000 meals each shift. We've never done that many, but actually our rector wants us to bag 60,000 meals, but I'd be so proud of 50,000. The cost still is 30 cents a meal, so $1.80 a bag. That bag saves 6 lives. It's very simple, it's very fundamental. There is a role for everybody from 8 years old to 90. Kids love to be runners. They love to ring the gong, and we love having them. So your family members can volunteer. Any questions?
Bill, we've got some, we have a sign-up sheet over there.
Yeah.
So if those folks, preferably they register online, but if they don't, can we drop their names in there, or?
If you give them to me, I'll enter them by hand
Okay.
in that same website. But you can pick your volunteer shift. Would love to have you come, love to have you bring your families, really love to have you make a contribution. A $20 contribution feeds 67 people. And that's predominantly starving children throughout the world. No questions?
Can you run through that one more time, the address?
http://events.stophungernow.org /St. Albans.
There's on the table.
On the table over there as well, there's a sheet that has the website if you didn't get it, so you can stop by on your way out if you want to double check it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Great program. So make sure we have plenty of representation from this club. I know we're going to have at least 10 Interact students are going to be there as well. So, Ernie, got our sunshine report? Not too sunshiny out there, but at least it's not snowing, right?
I've got what's left of our sunshine. Okay, what's left of our sunshine report. So we already know that Dan is recovering and doing well, and we got the Neil report. The only birthday we have to celebrate is Oliver Noble on January 24th. Is Oliver here today? Well, that blows my whole routine since he's not here. So I had a little thing I wanted to do for Oliver, since I've known him for so long, back in the days when I worked at the at Viewmont Camera, if any of you remember Viewmont Camera Store out on 127 Pete Minor. I worked there, and Oliver would come in, and whenever Oliver came, he was still judge of the 25th district, or whatever it is at the time. And every time he would come in the door, I would always say, "Here come the judge, here come the judge." And he loved that. So I was going to do that for him today, but since he's not here, he misses out on that. He also shares birthdays with Neil Diamond, Ray Stevens, and John Belushi. I don't know if he has anything else in common with him, especially Belushi. With birthdays in mind and the upcoming election, the Iowa caucus is just around the corner. I thought it might be appropriate to talk about an upcoming presidential birthday and use Abraham Lincoln. Some quotes that Lincoln said in his years in office. This country with its institutions belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it or exercise their revolutionary right to overthrow it. So with that out there, go and vote this year, okay? I'm sure most of you will. America will never be destroyed from the outside if we falter and lose our freedoms. It will be because we destroyed ourselves. We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who seek to pervert the Constitution. And finally, he said his dream is of a place and time where America will once again be seen as the last best hope of Earth. And with that, I say, let's make America great again.
Thank you, Ernie. And it's now time for our program, Kathy.
I'm pleased today to introduce Joe O'Connor, the President and General Manager of Charlotte's NPR station, WFAE, and WFHE Hickory. You've got Joe's bio in your spoke. I won't repeat it, but I do hope he might talk a little bit about his association with Ted Koppel and the wonderful Nightline, for which you won an Emmy, I believe, or the group won an Emmy. If you listen to NPR for the Mike Collins Show or for the national shows like Prairie Home Companion or Car Talk, I know you enjoy it as much as I do, and maybe you enjoy it as a sort of alternative to the screaming voices on the other networks. So sometimes it's a voice of reason, and I'm pleased to introduce Joe O'Connor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me all right back there? Great. How many of you listen to WFHE, WFAE? Great. How many are members of WFHE? Well, thank you very much for keeping us going. Really appreciate that. A lot of thanks here. First, I want to thank President Seaman and say go Crawdads. I just learned about the Crawdads just now, so I've been invited to a game, so I look forward to that.
Look forward to having you.
But can't say go Panthers. I mean, seriously. Wanted to acknowledge Kathy Greathouse. Could you have a better name for a terrific host than Kathy Greathouse? I don't think so. But I also want to acknowledge a former board chair at WFAE, Clement Geithner, who was here with us, who was kind enough to invite me to the Lenore Rhine Business Club last year. Thank you. And then also want to, someone that I think you know really well that I've just gotten to know in the last year, that has just been not only been formerly outstanding corporate executive, who has just not only great business acumen, she's been able to give that to us on the WFAE board. So she's doing things for us, like arranging for me to learn about Hickory and all of its great character and its people and its institutions. But she's also doing something as really important to us as going through our personnel handbook, with my HR director. But she also has this great combination of great sense of humor and a keen BS meter. And she also has inspired me with her personal story and how she's gotten over some serious personal challenges recently. So I'm very grateful that Linda Greenwell is here, and I'm very grateful for her friendship and her mentoring. So thank you, Linda. And I too have an announcement. Thanks to the Charlotte Ballet, I got roped into being paired with one of their amazing dancers for their annual gala, which is the Dancing of the Stars deal. So I'm actually dancing in this gig. So you can vote for me beforehand. It's a buck a vote. So speaking of politics and voting, it's at charlotteballet.gala, charlotteballet.org/gala. You can vote for me and the amazing dancer Raven Barkley. And if you really dare to do something adventurous, go to the gala on March 5th and watch me, watch her dance. And our slogan, following up from an earlier speaker, is "Make America Dance Again." So there's I hope you'll have questions here, and I'll try and keep my remarks as brief as possible. But I hope you have questions, because I certainly have questions, because media is constantly changing. So I want to sort of get to the bottom line for me is like there's a really crucial role for the public, the nonprofit economic model for media, because right now you're seeing certainly in my personal story where I had the really great fortune of being in the right place at the right time to spend 14 years with Ted Koppel at Nightline and being able to globetrot from everything from Tiananmen Square to the first Gulf War, to being in South Africa and Cape Town when Nelson Mandela was released, to being in Panama when Noriega was under siege, to crisscrossing the country doing great stories. Nightline got great ratings. If there was breaking news, we would beat, back then it was Jay Leno and David Letterman, we would really beat them in the ratings. We would clean their clock, actually. And Nightline made a lot of money. So on average, beyond expenses for what is ABC, then it was bought by Capital Cities Incorporated, then bought by Disney. Our average sort of return for corporate was about $25 million a year. But the challenge with that, though, is in the economics of entertainment. You can actually spend more on Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or Stephen Colbert and make more money with them in the same time slot. So that's why you see the second version sort of Nightline without Ted Koppel is now on at, I think, 12:30 in the morning after Jimmy Kimmel. Because they can make more, even though they have to spend more money on entertainment, they can make more money. So that's where sort of the economic model, in terms of what you're seeing with newspapers, whether it be digital disruption, or how you get your information from your phone now, or whether it be even our brothers and sisters who we wish the best at PBS, which is not an urgent news operation, PBS, although a good friend of mine from Nightline, Sarah Just, is now the executive producer of the NewsHour, which is getting back into the ratings game, which in terms of getting a bigger and younger audience, which is fabulous. That's where sort of these economic models or formats are really affecting the degree of excellence you see in journalism. I mean, I'm wishing the best for a lot of the great newspapers. I'm a big fan of the Charlotte Observer, for example. But if you look at their circulation rates of the last 20 years, you see the lines in the chart going down pretty precipitously. So what's the future of this, and what do we rely on? So so it sort of gets me to my experience in Rhode Island, where I spent the previous 8 years before coming to Charlotte, and that's where it really came home to me about the absolute hunger and thirst for the kind of trustworthy journalism and diversity of storytelling that NPR gives around the country, and that we do as well at WFA. We believe quite strongly that the local newsroom in Charlotte Talks is reaching the same standards that you expect from NPR on a daily basis nationally. We achieve it on the local level, because otherwise you wouldn't listen. Otherwise you could digitally listen to NPR with bypassing WFAE. And I think that in Rhode Island, that was really tested, because I took the stations independent of Boston University for a lot of reasons in 2008, just before the market crashed. And I thought my timing could not have been worse. I'm asking people to help the startup nonprofit media company at the beginning of the worst recession since the Great Depression. It was one of these things where I had these reassuring, aphorisms come at me. You know, Joe, it's gonna get worse before it gets worse. And but you know, the remarkable thing is that when we did a membership campaign, and I try to say not to say pledge drive because my director of branding says never say pledge drive again. But on the membership campaign, we thought we would do 15,000, 50,000. We were planning emergency pledge drives. We're going to meet payroll. And instead we did $225,000. And we stayed over like in the six-year figures, you know, for years to come. It's because the community needed something it could trust, particularly in uncertain times. So at the same time, the Providence Journal closed all of its local bureaus. The leading local TV news operation laid off 60% of its local news staff. Well, we were actually, with restricted funding, hiring a healthcare reporter, an education reporter, an environmental reporter, a political reporter. We were growing, and otherwise people were collapsing. And we're doing it because people were making a tax-deductible contribution to a nonprofit media company that believed in something more than ratings and revenue. And believed in something higher than that. It's called public service. It's something you Rotarians know very well. Because if there is any sort of second line for me about the Rotary and its chapters everywhere in the country, it's that notion of servant leadership. Something beyond yourselves. Something we talked about in the blessing today. And I think that's what you see in NPR and WFE, WFHE. You know, the brand is emotionally literate. We talk about tough stuff. We talk about, for example, my personal story that I don't typically like to share with a lot of people, but it's part, I think, indicative of why I'm part of this. It was like my mom was mentally ill. It was a very tough thing growing up as an only child, working with stuff that I didn't understand. My dad was an Army colonel. This was an enemy he was not trained to combat. And sort of that level, that generation of Irish American families, just close ranks and you don't talk about it. And one of the things that's attracted to me about NPR is that you hear stories like that all the time. It's not just the top of the news. It's not just why Donald Trump isn't, you know, participating in the debate. It's about stories about people who have successfully worked with you know, challenges like mental illness or alcoholism, or if you listen to StoryCorps every Friday morning, it's about these amazing conversations between family members about tough stuff about growing up and actually having the courage to talk about things you don't necessarily talk around a football game. And I think that's sort of the attractive, the diversity of storytelling. So that's another reason why, you know, you wouldn't do that in a focus group for a commercial network these days. You wouldn't say, oh yeah, we want to do that story. No, actually we have to have the, you know, the good guy and the villain and the hero and the clean-cut story. And I think sometimes life isn't like that. It's not as clear as that. The other thing is sort of like if it's complex and it's economic, you know, it used to be at Nightline, what's O'Connor doing? I would be doing all those stories from the savings and loan disaster to the bank insurance fund for regular banks, what's going on with banking, what's going on with Wall Street. One quick anecdote, you know, I always tell Ted Koppel, like, look, what I can do for you, Ted, because you don't understand it, and he admitted that. It's like, I'll do you a Sesame Street explanation that's compelling, and it's good television. Great. Unfortunately, when the market crashed in '87, he thought it was a great idea to have the Muppets explain economic terms during a 1987 big town meeting, Nightline town meeting. And so, you know, he had to, like, you know, Fozzie Bear with, you know, the, who's the Grouch out of the trash can, and they're supposed to explain selling short, right? You know, and you see the Muppets doing their best, and then the Muppets turn into like, you know, like, well, we don't get it, you shouldn't either, right? That gives you an example where we're also able to take reasonable risks. So let me sort of fast forward to today, and then I want to sort of hear your questions. But I actually believe sort of with the nonprofit model and the diversity of storytelling, the excellence of stories that gives you context, not just headlines. It's willing to tell you stories that challenge your own particular point of view. It's emboldening you, it's helping you think, it's provocative. And I think it's the antidote to sort of the commercial end right now where it's trying to get the lowest common denominator by provoking you, by angering you, by scaring you. And so you'll stay through 20 minutes of commercials per hour. They'll get you hyped up. It's designed to do it. It's programmed to do that for the listener. And we're the antidote to that. But what's our future in the digital world. And you sort of see everyone on their phones, and my son's 21, he's a senior at Emerson. You know, and he reflects, you know, the data that we're getting that's concerning. He doesn't own a radio. No one on Emerson, you know, no one in his age group, I bet, you know, owns a transistor radio, even though there's still like, you know, a billion out there because they're so inexpensive. So what do you do with that? And what are you worried about your future in terms of, are the millennials listening? And he overhears sort of my anxiety about this, and I'm so grateful to him. Of course, I love him to death anyway, right? So, but, you know, he like, hey, Dad, listen to me. You know, and it's always in the car. It's funny how kids tell you the truth in the car, automobile. He's like, NPR is a golden brand in every classroom and in every dorm room at Emerson. You know, just because we don't own radios doesn't mean we're listening. But are they listening to the local station? Or are they listening to a podcast? Right? Are they listening to, you know, ESPN radio? Are they streaming that audio? Or are they streaming NPR? There are a lot more competitors in the space. So that's, on the one hand, is a concern. And then on the other hand, sort of, you see last October, New York Times magazine, I think, got a big story and talked about all medium, including digital, right? And they had this line like, and the winning medium is, and believe it or not, based on the data, it's still good old FM radio. It's not your father's Oldsmobile. It's because ease of use, the Silicon Valley term, hit the button in your car and it's still there. Of course, if you've gotten a car in the last year, there are a lot more buttons to choose from. I was just at the NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony talking to a few of the supporters of the Hall of Fame. And they're really concerned about the younger generation being interested in NASCAR because the data they're getting is showing is that the younger generation of millennials, they think of the car as an extension of their phone, rather than a way to connect with people, rather than to like burn some rubber, right? So I mean, so it's really, but radio still, in terms of ease of use, is still really king. So we don't want to overreact to the digital revolution and digital disruption. What we want to do, because our numbers, we're not like, you know, the newspaper subscription numbers I told you about, or some of the PBS drop in revenues. We're more sort of staying high. Like Morning Edition has about 31 million listeners in the morning, and that's serious. That's a serious number, 31 million, right? But there's just this slow sort of, not a big fade, but it's just drifting a little bit lower. So podcasts, so you now have, you know, all sorts of, if you get Honda with sort of the Apple Dash, the dashboard now becoming the extension of your phone. There are more options to choose from. So we need to be concerned about that. But it's more like a digital expectation of the FM user. So WFAE, WFHE, we have to invest more in digital. We've got a lot of work to do. But just yesterday, a leading radio blog by the Jacobs brothers, Paul Jacobs, asked sort of really 4 principal questions in yesterday's blog about what is radio? And because radio is a device, but I mean, it's the notion for NPR is like radio is everywhere. It's on your phone, it's on your computer, it's just not on an AM, FM radio. And so we have to be aware of what are ratings. Right now with podcasting, it's tough to determine who's, you know, we can tell when you download a podcast from NPR, but we can't tell if you listen to it. So the technology is still not perfect there. So are we measuring who's listening and why they're listening? The whole thing about ratings for me is always, are we measuring who's not listening and why they're not listening? We don't do that. And we need to find a way to do that. And then, you know, what is content? We talked about that, everything from Serial, which is not an NPR, a distributed, great, successful podcast, or I'm a big fan, I don't know if you are, of the ESPN podcast, PTI, with Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon. I think they're 2 of the most entertaining, but I also think they're the smartest sports journalists in the country. And then we talked about the in-car entertainment. You know, so with all of that competition, you know, WFA remains the #1 format, #1 station in the market for the radio, for the talk news format, between ages 25 and 59. Our average age listener is 46. Nationally for NPR, it's in the low 50s. And I think that's because here in Catawba County, Certainly in Mecklenburg County, we are seeing incredible growth. The only metropolitan area growing faster in the country right now is Austin, so we're number 2. And a lot more millennials attracted to maybe downtown, or I know there's a lot of talk here about how to keep millennials, attract them here in Hickory. But we think that, they're not necessarily glued to their cars, but they're glued to their phones. So we need to be in that space. But I'm going to conclude with a thing that there's a email that you can sign up for. You can get every morning. It'll be in your box at 7 a.m. The Charlotte Agenda, deliberately designed to attract a millennial readership. And last October, they had a really great article focusing on local content in WFAE. And I'm going to quote the author, a millennial author. Quote, "I know NPR's audience, WFAE's audience, skews older, but I think it'd be a misstep to assume, or worse, ignore younger listeners. NPR had something of a cult following on my college campus and has maintained or even strengthened its status among my 30-something circle today. It'll be interesting to watch them, NPR nationally, WFAE locally, continue to evolve and capture listeners as new technology continues to outpace traditional radio and as digital natives come of age into their target demographic. And I think the future for us will grow as we grow into the digital space stemming from our analog FM continuing success. I think it'll grow even more as we think about perhaps a major station relocation to a much more visible location in uptown Charlotte, as we continue to engage folks and bring people to the station, perhaps in a new building, perhaps, here I was just at Catawba County Community College, at Lenore Rhine. Continue to get out there and engage with you in the civil discourse and the engaging and compelling conversation that creates epiphany. And as Jenny Buckner, a former publisher of the Charlotte Observer and former board chair of WFAE, says, what we are essentially is the oxygen on which democracy depends. So with that, I'll leave it there and say thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to your questions because I have the same ones. Thank you very much. By the way, the title of that article was in Charlotte Agenda that I just quoted from, was I Frickin' Love WFAE. And let me add, I frickin' love Hickory, and now I frickin' love your Rotary Club. Please, any questions? Yeah, sir. Behind you.
When you mentioned your son and getting advice from him, my son's about the same age, and he wakes up in the morning listening to WBUR.
Gotcha.
Instead of turning on the TV like everyone else does. So I'm wondering if WFAE can get to that BUR status, countrywide, so part of how you have your long-term sustainability.
That's a great question. So, having worked for BUR, I was a cub reporter there during grad school, and then I ran the program On Point for 9 months, so I'm a huge BUR fan. Typically when you do that, it's because you want a sense of place. So you're listening to BUR because you're typically interested in Boston news and a Boston thing. You're listening to their lineup of programs. It's a lineup of programs. Any program director at any member station we can pay for them. We think based on our #1 status in the key demographic, we're doing pretty well in that department. Typically for people who really want to stream WFAE constantly around the country, you probably have to have some connection to this area. So it probably wouldn't be the best pursuit of marketing dollars to try and compete with NPR on a national basis with just what we offer. That being said, WBUR is a signature of creating programming that is first locally excellent, and then they syndicate nationally. You could argue the same thing for Minnesota Public Radio. Prairie Home Companion was first a local show. Garrison Keillor is all about being Lutheran in Minnesota. Now, I love that, and my late parents loved it because my mom's from St. Paul, right? But there was something where he touched the heart with his sense of storytelling that went global. But that, in order to create that, that's a real roll of the dice with your budget money. Because typically you're going to have to win it by being locally great first, and then seeing whether or not you can syndicate. The problem with attempts in previous years to syndicate Charlotte Talks was that its key value was that it was so local. So none of the syndicators wanted to take it. And then you might be spending more money on staff to make it more national in scope, but there's no guarantee of a return on investment nationally. You're gonna be happy with losing money on it locally for a while. So I ran On Point with Tom Ashbrook. In 2005, 2006, that was $1 million budget. And they didn't make that back nationally. They are now, because they stuck with it for 10 years. So that's 10 years of, hitting some other line in the budget, as an investment going forward. So did that answer your question? It's a challenge. Sorry, behind you.
The WFHE, is that, by branching out, is that just a tower, or is there anything else to that, or is there plans for that?
It's just a tower, so one could call it a repeater. Essentially, if you think of a perfect circle around our tower in Charlotte, for a long time, that top of the donut was sort of crushed because of other competing signals and other requirements by the FCC, where we could not extend WFAE as far north as we wanted to serve Hickory. So that's why WFHE was purchased to serve. Of course, now we have, I think, the best broadcast engineer in the business, Joby Sprinkle. He negotiated with the FCC and other parties where he was able to undo that crease in the donut. So WFAE goes much farther north than it ever has. So in some ways, FHE is slightly redundant except to the northwest. But that was the purpose for FHE, is to make sure that you could hear the WFAE programming. Now, I think where you're leading is, whereas we as a licensee to WFHE and Hickory, where can we figure out how to do more Hickory-based coverage? And that becomes a pretty big budget issue really fast. To do like a Hickory bureau, you're talking about correspondent, you're talking about an expenditure, office, salary, benefits, full-time Hickory, whether it be online or on air. So we're into the 6 figures already. So it's something where we can talk about. I mean, Clem and I have talked about this too, about whether or not it's something that the community would welcome. But we need not just to do it, we'd have to do it with restricted funding that would have to come from the community right now. And then would have to be sustainable in order to get quality people. So the price tag tends to become rather intimidating. So then the flip side of that is, what can we do now? So in each of the beats, whether it be arts, environment, politics, healthcare, education, I mean, that's where we're talking to president of the Catawba County Community College about, what do you got going on up here? Who are your internationally known faculty? And he's got a dozen, right? Charlotte Talks needs to know about these folks. It's like, where are your big community events? Where are the community events that you guys know about? Our newsroom and Charlotte Talks needs to know about it. That's our mission to the community right now, and that's what we can do within our current budget. But look, there's a reason, I have April and Jeff here. I mean, I brought new state-of-the-art talent to the station so we can actually realize our fundraising potential. Now, on the surface, that may sound like I'm going to ask you for money, and all I'm doing right now is asking you for a vote for the ballet. But I think based on our success in ratings, we should be more efficient fundraising, and that should lead to more local programming, including coverage in Hickory. Did I answer your question? Great questions. Sir?
Why was the fresh air program shifted from noon to an evening slot?
Well, there are two reasons. One, if you looked at our ratings and you saw like morning edition, so for you it's morning edition, and it fades a little bit because morning drive, people get out of their cars, have to go to work, can't listen while they're working. Although I think that's permissible. But it starts to fade a little bit, Charlotte Talks, and then, sort of, it was okay, and then you get to fresh air. I love fresh air, I love Terry Gross, and the whole public radio system, I was a debt of gratitude for the quality of that program. Fresh air, boom. Then when Here and Now came on, back up. So there's a place where, as much as we all love Terry, place my heart, hand on my heart for Terry Gross, if you're a regular listener, you're noticing that she's there maybe 3 times a week. She has a lot of vacation, which I don't begrudge her. And then when there's supposed to be a fresh show, and let's say David Bowie passes away, sadly, instead of the fresh show, fresh air, it's the last interview she did with David Bowie in 1997, right, which I crave. I love those, to think back on all of those things. So the audience numbers consistently, and it wasn't just one book, over the years, were showing a significant drop-off. So we felt, the other reason is the data is showing that shows that package their top shows in one topic per hour. And they don't sort of, well, On Point's a good example where it's 1 hour, but they do a great job of segmenting the hour. They do the arc of the conversation. They'll bring in one reporter, here's what's going on, you know, with regard to the latest on this new virus disease that may be affecting pregnant women, you know, in various parts of the world and may come here, right? So they'll have a reporter, an NPR reporter at the beginning to give you a synopsis of the story. Then they'll promote the next subject and have this guest talk about this. Middle of the program, this. End of the program, where do you want to leave the listener? So they're really good at producing the arc of the conversation even though it's one topic. Or it's, you know, like The Takeaway, or The World, or All Things Considered, where it's 10 minutes per topic, which the data is showing is more preferable based on the amount of listening that's happening to those programs versus a one topic per hour, or if it's one topic, it's segmented in a way to keep you there. So Fresh Air doesn't do that, and I think that's another reason why. And I think, quite frankly, I enjoy it more at night, and we do the best of Fresh Air on the weekends as well. So we're still a huge fan of the program, but look, I was at Nightline when Ted Koppel went from 5 nights a week to 4 to 3. And that is just is a formula for losing audience. So that's what's happening with Fresh Air. It's a good question. We still love it very much. No problem.
Thank you. We have a book of quotes on thank you and giving thanks for you for speaking with us today. We appreciate that. And I'm sure you'll stay around if people, I'm sure this looks like they have more questions. I'm sorry I had to cut you short there. John, come on down. Please sign up for the anniversary luncheon as well as going online and signing up for Stop Hunger Now. Would like to thank the visiting Rotarian and guests of Rotarians for joining us here today.
You seem like you're the most.
Yeah, it would have to be unlocked.
Yeah, we have, Lynn Lair has assured me that she has accurately accounted for all the money that's been pulled in for the last 3 weeks. Today, we pulled in $72. We have 49 cards and 2 jewel purses.
For a total of,
Well, I don't know how much we had, so it's around $300.
okay.
Last 3, 520.
You don't know how much money you're playing with.
Lynn's dealing from the bottom of the deck. Hey, the winner's a winner. She's got it. Ace of Clubs. Free lunch. Please join me in the 4-way test. Is it the truth?